Okay, today we're going to talk about problem number 4 in chapter 3, the percentages problem. This is from the 7th edition. So what we want to do is create an application named percentages. The main method holds two double variables, and then we're going to pass those variables to a method called compute percent. That method's going to display the two values and the value of the first number as a percentage of the second one. And along with that, we're going to incorporate part B also. We're going to go ahead and get the values from the user at the keyboard. And then also in there we've got to call it a second time if the number is reversed. Right? We have to call compute percent twice. Okay, so we're going to start off with a public class called percentages, and the class body will go inside there. And then inside the class body we want two methods: public static void. We want the main method, and the method body will go there. And then we also want another method called compute percent, and so that's what we would have, sort of a shell to start coding with. So okay, so first off we want to accept the values of the two doubles from the user at the keyboard. So here we have a choice to make. You can either use the J option pane or you can use the scanner class. I think I'm going to go ahead and use the J option pane. Remember, the price that I'll have to pay for that is that I'll have to change the strings that the user inputs, and I'll have to change those into doubles. So let's go ahead and start working on that. I'm going to have a string that the user is going to enter. Let's call that input number, and then two doubles, number 1. Going to call those number 1 and number 2. Okay, and so then I'm going to go ahead and get the input from the user. So input number J option pane is the class that I'm using. And then I'll want to use the show input dialog method. And say, please enter the first number, or something to that effect. So input number will be a string, right, that I get from the user, and then I want to change it to a double so that I could use that in a calculation. So I'll say number 1 equals then double parse double input number, right? And that will change the string into a double and store the result in the variable number 1. And then basically I just want to repeat that same process. So what I'm going to do is just cut and paste all this stuff. I copy and paste. The next line's over here, and then in the input line I'll have to change that to second number, and then I'll change that variable to number 2. So far this will take care of the input that we need from the user. So now we'll go to the compute part. We want this method here to compute and display the results. If I remember correctly here, it says pass both variables to a method named compute percent, and that method is going to display the two values and the value of the first number as a percentage of the second one. Okay, so number 1 and number 2 that we captured from the user in the main method, those numbers are going to have to be passed to this method down here. So what I'm going to need are 2 parameters of type double. And I'm going to call the first one num1, and the second one is also a double, and I'm going to call it num2. You can call these whatever you want as long as it's a legal identifier. It doesn't have to match what this is here, what you called up here, but or what you called the variables up there, but it can match, so it doesn't matter a whole lot. Okay, so now what I want to do then in this method, I'm going to just display the results to the user, and I'm going to use show message dialog null, and then num1, so whatever gets passed in this num1 spot, right, that's going to be displayed. And then I want to say that number is, and then compute the percentage right here. So to compute the percentage, it would be num1 divided by num2 times 100, right? Num1 divided by num2 would change it to a decimal, and then times it by 100 would change it to a percent. And then here the percent sign is something percent of, and then num2. So this line here should pop up a message dialog box, and num1, which got passed in here, it will say whatever that number is, and then here's the part where I compute the percentage, and then percent of, and then whatever number gets passed in num2, that will be displayed right here. So that's really what we want compute percent to do, is to show that message. So okay, so here we have the input part, and here's the part where we're computing and outputting. We need to kind of link these two up with a method call, right? We want to, if we just ran the program right now, it would just get the input from the user. It would start here in the main method. It would get the input from the user, and then it would end. Nothing would happen. It wouldn't ever use this method right here. So we have to call the method compute percent. And then because compute percent has 2 parameters, num1 and num2, we have to pass it 2 doubles in order for it to do its job. So, and those doubles are going to be number 1 and number 2, right, for the first method call. So this line right here will say, okay, I'm going to call the method compute percent. This value is going to get passed to the first parameter. This value is going to get passed here as the second one, and then it's going to do its work and come back to the main method. So we also need a second call, right, because the problem calls for it. And they want us to call compute percent again, but this time with the numbers in reverse order, like that. So this will call compute percent again, and we'll have number 2 gets assigned to num1, number 1 gets assigned to num2 here. And so let's see, that looks like we're ready to try compiling now. And it compiles okay. And now let's run it. Please enter the first number, so 2. Please enter the second number, 5. 2 is 40% of 5, and 5 is 250% of 2. And let's just try it again. Some random numbers, 13 and 85. Alright, and so it looks like that's what they wanted us to do here.